Hello and welcome to the Collapse Experiment. I've got a recently read book today about a topic that I have studied. I can't say thoroughly because there's so many people out there who've learned more about this topic than I have over the years, which would be the Oklahoma City bombing that happened in 1995 in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Kind of self-explanatory. But this book was written, was it the same year as the bombing? First printing, 1995. This is the second printing from 1996 by Jon Rappoport. It's not a very thick book, but what it does is it captures almost immediately after the bombing all the media, government, justice system, FUBARs that happened with the investigation, with the knowledge of the bombing itself. Very early on, Jon Rappoport, he focuses on a few things that later on I would come to question as well. And so, like, for example, and this is years apart from information that we now have regarding certain topics, like Larry Potts is the FBI guy from Ruby Ridge, Idaho, where in 1992 federal agents carrying out a search warrant on one Randy Weaver in his home shot Randy Weaver's wife in the face and killed her as she was holding their 10-month-old baby in their arms. She bled to death in the front porch. Larry Potts is in charge of the investigation in OKC, Oklahoma City. Larry Potts was also identified later on, years later, by Terry Nichols as the man named by Timothy McVeigh as their handler through the FBI in bombing the Murrah building. But Larry Potts comes up in this book almost immediately. I mean, long time frame here, but pretty much almost immediately after the bombing. Like, I don't know what month this book came out, but the fact that it was published in 95, the bombing happened April of 95, and for him to focus on things like Larry Potts, kind of telling, right? But there's a lot of other things that he brings up in here. There's a lot of indications that there's a lot of things that he focuses on, like the Waco massacre, the people who are investigating the Waco massacre that happened with the Branch Davidians. And then you've got Ruby Ridge and how all these people are somehow connected to the Oklahoma City bombing for some odd reason. Like, how do these people end up being these same people that end up investigating this thing? Which, as we learn later on through other sources of information, likely might have led to the event happening itself. So this is a nice little time capsule that Jon Rappoport created. Stuff that people learned early on, like Timothy McVeigh being in Kingman, Arizona, where he showed up, blah, 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 working part-time at a hardware store. Like, things that we had not even, like the court case, the trial had not happened yet. And yet people are learning things about Timothy McVeigh and him being in Iraq and the Nichols brothers and all this stuff coming out. So he asked a lot of questions, and it's questions that would end up leading people later on to other pieces of information. But what I really enjoyed about this was how it really captured the questions early on. Things that we still don't have answers to today, or if we do have answers, they're not the official narrative that we were told, and yet nobody wants to look at this new information that really answers what happened. And this is like a side tangent, but this is something that I thought about recently when it comes to this case, is that we never got the video footage from the Murrah building or any of the surrounding buildings that show the Ryder truck in front of the Murrah building prior to the explosion, right? All that video footage was taken, it was documented. We know this because there's paperwork stating so. And yet the FBI is just like, it doesn't exist. I'm sorry, but this fucking paperwork here, written by your secretary in 1995, states that you've got a videotape of several angles of the Ryder truck being in front of the Murrah building. Now, there's several things about that tape in particular that I've been pondering in my head. For one, we know almost for a fact, because that tape was viewed by several people in a place in Florida with a sheriff present where it was to be sold by an FBI employee to a news agency after the viewing, where it showed McVeigh getting out of the truck, and then it showed John Doe number 2 getting out of the truck, and likely the one who lit the fuse for the bomb, which meant that you could not convict McVeigh of the one who actually detonated the device, because he just drove the truck. He was an accomplice. That's not necessarily a death sentence, which they killed him for. The other thing is, the number that was on the axle of the truck that was discovered later, the FBI repeatedly, time and time again, says this is the VIN number of the truck. This is how we linked it back to the rental company. No, it's not a VIN number. It's a parts number. It's a parts number for that model of truck, which leads you nowhere other than you know what kind of truck it was. Not that it was a Ryder truck, not that it was rented, it's just that it was a truck that was built with that axle, which there were several models of that truck that were built with that kind of axle. So anyways, the videotapes themselves, one of them probably had the license plate of that truck, which would have led them back to the rental company. However, the FBI could not say, due to the video footage of the truck in front of the building, which shows likely our informant / operative being the one who lit the fuse in the truck, we can't use that as evidence. But we have the evidence of the license plate that goes back to the rental company where it was registered. I have a feeling that's what happened. And then they just made up the VIN number for the axle, thinking that the general public wouldn't put 2 and 2 together. But that's the official story. That axle still sits in the museum in Oklahoma City, where you can look at it and clearly see this is not a VIN number. This type of number was never used as a VIN number. And the VIN number is not even printed on the axle of a truck. It's not stamped in at the factory. It's a fucking parts number. You morons. So yeah, there's a tape out there that has some dude doing something, which we know from witness accounts. It was not McVeigh who probably lit the fuse for that truck. It was John Doe number 2. John Doe number 2 is probably likely, because everyone else involved in the bombing was an operative for the ATF or the FBI. And this book, I give a lot of credit to this book for having people asking the questions, to keep asking more questions and looking for answers to what the fuck happened that day. And it's clear at this point that with the people who are currently in charge of the FBI, we are getting no answers about what happened back in 1995 of all times. No, we're just going to have more history books where it's like, Timothy McVeigh did it by himself with 2 accomplices, but he did it by himself. he was the only one driving that truck that day by himself with John Doe number 2 in the passenger seat. So anyways, if you've come across the copy of this book, which I had to buy this off of Thrift Books, it's a fairly new copy, and I've got like highlights in here and all kinds of stuff going on. It's clearly like it was professionally published, as you can tell, but it's more of just a pamphlet, and it's filled with tons of information. If you want to get started on learning about the Oklahoma City bombing and all the questions behind it and why people today regard it as like one of the best conspiracy theories that you could study on your own, then start with this. There's a couple of other good, bigger books that are out there that have come out over the years, but I like when this was published. The same year. If they're questioning things almost immediately after the event, you know some shady shit went down. So that is Oklahoma City Bombing, The Suppressed Truth by Jon Rappoport. Highly recommend this book if you are interested in the topic, if you have questions, if you are hoping for more answers to certain questions. This will get you started in the long list of other books, which I also have down on the shelves over there. That will get you started. So, have you read anything about the Oklahoma City bombing? I know there are a ton of you out there who are interested in this topic because you comment on my other previous videos. And yes, I do have a playlist of videos on this topic, which maybe at some point I'll get back to doing more videos on that. But in the meantime, this is about the best that I can do. So having said that, let me know in the comment section what you think. Do you think McVeigh did it? Didn't do it? Do you think it was John Doe number 2? Does it not matter? Let me know. In the meantime, keep on typing.